Visionomicon.
Sights from beyond.
Culture cult.
Wow, okay, so being a non-musician myself, I actually appreciate all genres of music, all forms of music, because anybody that can play music is definitely more talented than me. But growing up in the 70s, from 71 to the late 70s, obviously the usual type of music you hear in the 70s, the Beatles, Bee Gees, you have the Rolling Stones, you have people like Eagles, David Bowie, Pink Floyd, and all this. Wasn't so much of any metal or underground music at that time. The only exception was Leaf Hound, which was considered in the genre of stoner metal, together with Blue Cheer from the US. Leaf Hound is from the UK, so that was probably the only non-mainstream sort of music. Growing up, of course, in the 80s, then when I was in I went in primary school and secondary school in the 80s. I think in 1980 I was primary 4. Obviously, you have your what we call now retro, but 80s popular music and things like that. But in about, I think it was in 80 or 81 that a friend actually passed me a copy of the Black Sabbath album Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, and that actually was my first real proper listening to heavy metal. And obviously with that I started to go backwards to look at what came during that time, and obviously it led all things to like Led Zeppelin, or even from the US, you had Grand Funk Railroad, Sir Lord Baltimore, and others. And of course, later on came, and in the late 80s came the new wave of British heavy metal. And then we started to move on into, in the 80s, started to move on into thrash, black. It's when all these genres came out, thrash, subgenres, thrash, death, black. I basically gained an interest in metal music. With all these different genres, you have things like Motorhead, Iron Maiden, which are the common ones. Even for thrash, like Tigers of Pantang, which I think I don't really hear much people listening to in Singapore, but it was thrash. And then Venom, Possessed, Death, Obituary under the death metal. And of course, for black, you have black metal, you have Bathory, Merciful Hate, Celtic Frost. There was a particular band, Boat Thrower, that was very special to me, because Boat Thrower, of course, was a band that was formed to promote or be accompanied music for a game called Warhammer 40,000 or Warhammer 40k from Games Workshop. And my friend and I, we were the first people in Singapore way back then to bring in these miniatures, which were wargaming miniatures, and the game system itself. So that was back in the mid 80s. So that's when Warhammer actually released. Boat Thrower actually released music for Warhammer, so you could play with it during your gaming. So of course, Boat Thrower is a personal favorite I have. I think I have all the albums so far they have. Personal favorite of mine. And then there wasn't much influence from hardcore bands at that time in the 70s. But in the 80s, again, another friend of mine in school, he passed me I think it was a bootlegger tape of Black Flag's album, The Damage. I think it was the first Black Flag album, and it was a much more harder sounding sound, but I think the lyrics were probably what was interesting. So from there, obviously, when you get this, you'd like to find out what came before that. Of course, then that brought me to Minor Threat. We have things like Agnostic Front, Chromax. You got exposed to the early days of hardcore in the beginning, and then with hardcore and hardcore punk being very closely related, naturally one of the bands that I came across was Misfits, and that veered me off into another direction. So we go into the punk direction. You have Buzzcocks, Ramones, Social Distortion, Circle Jerks, Crossbear, all this. But these were mainly foreign music, if you want to call it overseas music. For the local music, the one of the ones that I listened to as a young kid back in the 70s was the Thunderbirds, because the Fitzgerald brothers were classmates of my father's at St. Gabriel Secondary. So Thunderbirds were one of the local bands at that time, very popular. And of course, it came along with that you move into local music. You have album records of The Quest, Veronica Young and the Silver Strings, Naomi and the Boys, Sakura Ting, Go-Go Queen, or even the Blackjacks. Local underground scene for myself, the music, I did not really get into it until I met Suhaimi from Stomping Ground. And there was, I think, somewhere around 88 or 89. We were both of us got to know each other in the same toy collecting community, Star Wars and all the others. And of course, he told me that he actually had a band called Stomping Ground, and they were also into hardcore. So, being exposed to Black Flag and all the rest, and I was thinking, oh, okay, so we actually have a hardcore scene in Singapore. And with watching Stomping Ground, in those days we were in substation, we were doing flea markets in substation for toys, both Suhaimi, I, and a few others, the first few guys to do it. And of course, Stomping Ground did play, back then it was known as a courtyard, and today it's called Timber. But there was a cement stage and we could perform. So that's where I got exposed to the local underground performances or live gigs. Of course, in the days at that time, I think it was only in 1991 onwards that we had a breakout of a lot of hardcore bands coming. Of course, before that, you have Opposition Party, you have Zircon Lounge, Crystal's Zircon Lounge, and things like that. But I think it was, and of course, it was in the early 90s that the hardcore scene break out. And you have things like, you have a lot of bands. I think a lot of bands, and that's part of what drives me, because a lot of bands have been lost in history, in local history. A lot of hardcore bands. You have bands like, of course, you have some of the bands I still remember, like Foresights and Voice Up, but you have a lot of ones that I think a lot of modern hardcore generation doesn't really recall, the local hardcore generation now. Bands like Shaolin, you have bands like the Japs, you have the bands like Obscure, United Blood, Rectified, Intense Decibel, and Rage Soulfire. This were those days. And then of course you have Psychosonic, Obstacle Upsurge, the female bands. And then so that was hardcore. And then of course came the golden age of Singapore's indie scene. And then you have the various genres coming out into our Singapore underground scene. You have bands like I guess Global Chaos, Silent Sorrow, Nunsex, even things like Recapturing Ortelis is also one of them. You have then you move into things like then of course I started to explore metal in Singapore. And of course, one of the first early metal bands that was in Singapore was Force Melissa, and then later on, of course, they became Stukas. And then you have things like Rudra starting out Vedic metal. You have Silkanas, Abora, and then you have the rest of the 90s later on coming in with Humpback Oak, Fellows, Pagans, Padres, Force Vomit, Bob Fox, and all these things. So, yeah, I don't really have any specific influence. I enjoy music. Obviously, there's some genres that I didn't really, not say they're no good, but it's really not my favorite. I'm not really much into hip hop or rap or things like that. Maybe a bit of shoegaze, a bit of emo music, but not that strong. But I even listen to things. I even listen to things like soundtracks, early days soundtracks where you have composers like John Barry, John Williams, Alan Silvestri, Danny Elfman, Ennio Morricone, and others. And even I even listen to, if you want me, I can even name you military marching music. People like John D'Souza, Edwin Goldman, Richard Rogers, Joseph Wagner, and of course even classical music or opera. So there really isn't any one strong influence. But I think the influence was more hardcore was because of the lyrics. Spoke to me. I'm not an academically person, a good guy. Not academically very good. I repeated my O levels, Sec 4. I repeated twice. I went to VITB, then today it's called IT, but in those days it was VITB, and I'm only basically a post-secondary education. So the lyrics of hardcore actually talk about the social disparity and then what the viewpoints of people have in the world regarding society. So I guess it was more of the lyrics that that I feel connected to, as opposed to the music, because being a non-musical person, I enjoy good music, or any music is good music, because I can't play, but it's more of the words and the lyrics that speak out to me. First of all, I'm not a commercial or professional photographer. Photography is a hobby, but it's a hobby which I've been doing since primary 1, primary 2. And that's because my father also had an interest in photography, again, non-professional, but we take the hobby very seriously. So, give example, when I was young and still staying in Toa Payoh, and then later on we stay in Geylang, we actually we converted the master bedroom into a photographic dark room. So we took rolls of films, which we bring outside, we take photos, we bring back home, and we actually process the negatives, all the positive slides. And for the negatives, we actually have an enlarger in the room, and we actually enlarge the negatives onto 4R, 8R, 10R photos ourselves. So we actually have photo paper in the dark room, and then we process the photograph paper. So I grew up learning the steps and the processes of photography processing, C41 negatives, E6 positives, 4x5s, 120s, photography, and also photo paper processing, starting with bromide paper, which was more for black and white, and then later on came in RC paper or resin coated paper for photography. And obviously you go through things like photo retouching on the photo paper itself, because the resin coated paper, it will stretch a bit, there may be holes appearing during processing, so you actually take a paint to touch up the dots of the photo. So yeah, it was a very good learning experience, which of course later on will help me in my career in the printing industry. So as I grew up with manual cameras, Nikon FM, Nikon FM2s, films and things like that, I moved into digital photography, or rather changed equipment to digital only about 15 years ago. It was the first camera I had was Olympus E300, which was Olympus' first digital SLR camera, 8 megapixel. It's a digital SLR. I used that camera for almost 10 years, and then it's about 4 years ago. 4 or 5 years ago, I changed to the Nikon full frame 36 megapixel system, the D810. So, and that's been a camera that I've been using for what I've been doing to now. In terms of the subjects I like to shoot, it may come as a surprise, but generally I don't really like to shoot humans. So, friends always ask me, do you take wedding photography? No, I'm not very particular, have any interest in taking humans, unless it's maybe family members or something like that. But because of portraits, this is something which I don't do. Because I find that humans are a bit more harder subject to please. I rather take subjects of static nature, or objects which are static in nature. So object can't complain no matter how you take them, and objects are easier to control. You don't have to tell the object stand still and don't move. They actually are there. You just take. So my interest in photography was into areas like of course the usual thing of scenery. When you go around traveling, you take scenery. You take subject, any. Growing up, you shoot anything because there's a chance where you get a house, even if it's fireworks, going to the zoo or whatever, things like that. But one of the main interests that I've been doing for, I guess, coming to almost 30 years, one of the main subjects is actually in the area of military-related photography. So, like things like military exhibitions, be it air, land, and sea, like Navy, Air Force, Army, military equipment, military museums, military events, performances, displays, you name it. So much so that actually I'm now actually the group editor for a social group of photographers known as Military Aviation Photography Singapore. We actually have a website. I'm the editor, but all 10 of us are photographers. So we actually, we've been 5 years already. So over the last 5 years, we actually, out of our own pocket, we go to other countries to attend events, or we work with air forces to shoot certain things behind the scene, visit air shows, visit museums, things like that. So that's the interest which I still have today. And it's fun. It's fun to shoot aircraft, high-speed jet aircraft. For the area of what we call geek photography, the earlier cameras that I have were not really suitable, especially the Olympus was not really suitable for low light photography. It was only when I changed to a Nikon that I was able to push the boundary of what I could take. And this thing about taking photos in the underground scene here in Singapore, the gigs, it actually started in August 2016 when LC93 played at the Singapore Night Festival in Armenia Street. So I think there was like a midnight slot, so I was there at midnight, shot the whole thing, shot their set and everything. And of course, 8 days later, LC93 had the album launch at Aliwa. I think that was my first, that was my first gig shot with the digital camera. And I realized that the last, been married for 20 years, real life gets in the way. But of course, the children are grown up now. They're 18 and 16, so they're grown up. So there's really a lot of time now for me, especially on weekends. So I thought that why not come back into the scene and still enjoy the music, of course, but with equipment that is able to capture almost everything now. So from 2016 onwards, after LC93's album launch, I started to come back to the scene, to reconnect with the scene, to find out what's happening every weekend. So from then on till now, that's what I'm doing every Saturday or Sunday, or Saturday and Sunday, and sometimes even weekdays if there's any touring bands or that, and if I have time. That's basically the experience that I have. It's been a lot of trial and error. It's been a lot of so-called, if you call it, on-the-job learning. I think, and also, although I'm a photographer, but I think it was in 2018 that I also decided that perhaps we could do some video recording, things like that. So I actually started off using mobile phones, and then to mount it on the walls to shoot video. But obviously, mobile phones have a limitation, especially with sound and things like that. If you're playing loud music, it's probably going to blow the distortion of the mobile phone microphone and everything like that. So again, trial and error, learning. And then I think it was only last year that I started to decide that perhaps instead of a mobile phone, I should move into using GoPro, which is lighter, faster. But then, of course, with GoPro, I have to actually go and explore the technicalities of GoPro in terms of capturing the sound as stereo, so that you don't get it mono, stabilization, which GoPro was able to do it. So I won't call it videography. It's more just putting something there and just record the whole thing. That's all. I'm not a videographer thing. So, but at the end of the day, it's just to archive our underground scene for future needs or whatever that people may need. So that's basically the so-called photography experiences that I have. But just interestingly, while preparing for this interview, I was also looking through all my hard disks. So I actually sort of found that from 2016 August to now, actually I've shot about 164, or attended and shot with photography and or videography, 164 local gigs, and then I have shot 8 gigs in Malaysia and 2 gigs in Thailand. So it's quite interesting. I have not gone to Indonesia yet, and that's supposed to be it will probably be in 2021 because of the pandemic thing. So the event was postponed. So that's something that I'm probably looking forward to to add to my photography experience. Okay, for photography equipment, so I think obviously been doing photography, you need camera. So I use two camera actually. One is first hand, which I bought 4 years ago. One is second hand, which I think I bought about 2 years ago. One is a Nikon D810. The other is a Nikon 800E. So they are both relatively the same. They are actually just still in the same generation, but they're like brothers. One brother is a bit better, one brother is a bit not so good, but they have the same specs, the same, more or less the same menu. So it makes it easy for me to adjust menu by touch, because I know that the menu layout is more or less the same. Both are 36.4 megapixels. And then obviously with a camera you need a lens. So the two main lenses, I have a lot of lenses which are used for shooting aircraft, 600mm lens, things like that. But for gig photography in the underground scene, you need actually fast lens which are able to capture light more sensitively, because if you have performances which are low light, then you need a fast lens. So again, I'm not shy about using second-hand equipment. I don't really care whether it's first-hand or second-hand, as long as the thing works. Because at the end of the day, being not a professional, I would just like to keep the cost low. So this is a second-hand Nikon 70-200mm. So this is a f2.8. So this is good enough for most underground gig shots, because unless you're shooting at a stadium, then you probably need a 600mm. But then trying to buy a f2.8 600mm is probably going to cost you about perhaps the price of a housing board flat, 3 room maybe. This is good enough for me to get shots of close-ups, even of the drummer. So this is a 70-200 Nikon. I think I bought this second-hand at about $600. I think the full price. I think this is the second. This should be the second. There are many versions of this 70-200 Nikon. This is the second version, version 2. So I think the original retail price is about $1,200, but I got it off Carousel for like $600 second hand. And the person sold to me was in this fairly okay, a bit. You can see it's fairly used, but I didn't really care as long as the thing worked. But you notice that the front actually has squash. I think is because the reason I go for this lens is this is a heavy lens. It's a very heavy lens, but because of its weight and its its metal body, this is not plastic, it's solid cast metal. This is able to withstand the punishment of including dropping. So the reason why I couldn't put a lens cap, because I dropped this lens actually last year when I was shooting at ITE College Central for the Rock Central. So I was on the second floor and actually dropped this down a flight of metal steps. After drop, together with the body, pick it up, it was still attached, pick it up and carry on shooting with no problem. But it was able to take a punishment. So this thing, but there was no lens crack, everything still works fine, everything. So I think somebody has knocked into this lens also before, and there was a big cut on quite a deep cut on the eyebrow. I think it was Ashraf, sorry about that. It was moshing, and I was going close, and so you need a lens that can withstand the punishment, even hanging on the body or whatever. This is the main lens I take for close-ups, and then for general shots and everything like that, it will be the f1.8 35mm. Now this I bought secondhand for like I think about $200 off Carousel again. It's a plastic lens, which is very, very, very light, and the reason is f1.8, but the reason why it's so cheap is because it is not a full frame lens. This is actually a crop factor lens mounted on the full frame camera. So Nikon has this unique ability where you can mount crop factor lens on the full frame camera and it works. Although you may get a bit of vignetting, but Nikon actually minimizes the vignetting. So, and this is f1.8, so it's fixed. So the vignetting is really, really at the minimum. And frankly, in underground gig space, the corners are dark anyway, so you're not going to see any difference. So it's a very powerful lens, good enough. It's light, so when you mount on the body, it's short. You won't protrude out and knock. Yeah, probably the disadvantage is that you can't take wide. So if I go up, if I go close, I probably can only shoot you this way, because if I want to shoot a further, wider angle, I need to stand way back. But the reason why I used to do it with one camera, so I used to hang the lens and change the lens, you know, while shooting. But now with two cameras, I'll just mount one on this, one on that, and then there's a strap system just strapped to the camera. So this screws to the bottom of the camera body and ensures that this metal, this metal. So and then you cross strap across your body so that you can swing and you can drop it. It will not hit anything. So this is the system to protect the camera, and these are the two main lenses. This will be only two lenses that I will carry. I used to try other lenses, but I realized no point. These are the two lenses. So second-hand lens do work. There really isn't a need to spend money on brand new lenses. And then this is for the photography. So for the videography, as I mentioned earlier, that I actually started off using a Sony Xperia XZ, the old model. Was good to take. Sony had actually a good mobile phone for videography, and sound was good. You can mount it with a Sony AG0100 mic. Introduced to this by Sufyan, because Sufyan also had a Sony Xperia phone, and this mic was built for Sony for their mobile phones, and it had this microphone is beautiful. It's wonderful. It could record sound with not much distortion because it had a higher dB. It could withstand higher dB sound. But the only problem with Sony phones is that once the moment they overheat, the phone will actually shut down. So in the early days, I had a lot of trial and error. I had phones which are like, I had shots which are like, videos which are like cut off halfway because the phone overheated. So eventually I had to find a way to mount a small USB fan to cool it down. But still, you know, in trying to record at 720, the heat builds up. So, and then you need power. You know, your battery pack can't really last. Something you may need to have power. So then you look for power leads which are long. And so it was a whole learning infrastructure. There was quite a fair bit of misses. Then later on, as I mentioned last year, I decided that perhaps it was time to get a GoPro. So I started off with one GoPro, GoPro Hero Black 7. This is my first GoPro anyway, so I jumped into the Hero Black 7 instead of wasting time with white or silver. Just get into it. So it was like, I think it was like 460. Then I fell in love with it because stabilization. You know, it could run. Now it also has a heat limitation. I think it was once you reach kind of like certain heat, like 70, 65, 70, it will actually shut down or stop. But the fact is that most of our sets in local gigs probably last only about at most 40 minutes, 45. So you could actually withstand that sort of thing, and as long as there's air circulating, it's fine. But of course, you could play safe with a USB fan mounted nearby and things like that. But obviously, this brings with it advantages of lightness and ability to mount easier with clamps and whatever like that. And then about 6 months ago, 7 months ago, 6 months ago, I think, I decided to buy another GoPro, the same one. And this time around, GoPro Hero Black 7, the price has dropped. So this was like about $399. And the reason is because GoPro introduced the Hero 8. So Hero Black 7s are now actually, I think you can now find them for like $350, $320. They're getting cheaper. So again, I'm both brand new, but if I want to get a third unit, I probably will go for second hand one. I'm fine with that. So these are running very well. So yeah, this is basically, of course, the rest of the bag. I think those of you that know me, you always see me with two bags. So this is the main bag that carries our equipment. The other bag will carry things like the necessary tools like power extension cord, F clamps, cable ties, or what have you, pliers to the. In total, both bags weigh about 15 kilograms. So these are two bags, and obviously I have another long bag with 3 tripods inside there, 3-meter long tripods. So 3 pieces of 3-meter long tripods. But thankfully, because they're meant for GoPros or LED lighting, so thankfully they're very light. But it's still 3 tripods, which can be extended to 3 meters. So I would say all in all, the total weight I carry to any regular gig is probably in the region of 17 to 18 kilograms. So I've developed my own technique for setting up and tearing down, so it's fine. I'm not complaining. It's something enjoyable to do. Of course, with if you worry about storage, I never worry about storage because like for the GoPros, I have like I think 8 micro SD cards of about 256. So it's more than enough to record 24 hours for each GoPro. And for the cameras which are using SD cards, I have about I think at last count I have about 20 pieces of SD cards at 64 gig, so it's more than enough to shoot for any underground gigs in Singapore. I know we are now in the circuit breaker period, or what I would like to call the continuous circuit breaker period, or CCB. I think a lot of us, including myself, I think we miss underground music, underground gigs, underground performances, or even for bands themselves, musicians. I think the practices at the underground jamming sessions and rehearsals and things like that. So I know a lot of us, I think almost all of us can say to miss it, but I think we are also fortunate that here in Singapore we have sufficient technology, both internet or using internet technology and mobile phone technology. So we could do things like Zoom, Skype, WhatsApp, even Facebook, direct messages, whatever. So I think we are fortunate to have infrastructure that we can keep in touch with one another. So I think, we should, if necessary, use all this so that we can keep both our physical and mental state healthy. And then obviously, if you are essential worker, or if you are in the industry which is still working during this period, please, first of all, I want to thank you for continuing during this period. And I think it's necessary for all of us, for those of you, to take the necessary precautions to please stay safe. And I think for the rest of us, as much as we can, if there's no necessity, stay home and just let this thing finish, the circuit breaker finish. Obviously, the entertainment industry will take some time to open up, but at least hopefully we can get some semblance of normality back in our normal life. Then we'll just look forward to the day when we have underground gigs happening again, and then we'll all be there again, going crazy, going wild, and then we'll just enjoy each other's company again during that time. Hi, this is Gary from Boplay Photos, and you're watching Visionomicon.
Visionomicon.
Sights from